be here and welcome you all on this chilly night into the Opera House. I'm going to tell you a few things that are coming up here that you may want to know about. Tomorrow night we've got trivia in the lobby, holiday trivia. Come by for that, 6 p.m. On Saturday, this Saturday coming up also at 6 p.m., our Very Merry Holiday Concert. That's a live for $5. Tickets are $5 only. Mrs. Claus will be appearing. Some of you know her. She's going to be back. Some movies coming up. Movies to get you out of the house on these cold days. December 27th, 28th, and 29th, We Live in Time. That's one that's got a lot of awards buzz. Wicked. Wicked is coming up. The 10th, 11th, and 12th. Not confirmed, but I'll tell you unofficially, we do have that coming up. Look for it. And a couple other big events that you might want to know about. We have initiated a film club. A lot of information on our website. You can also pick up information. For all you film buffs, it's only $30. You get 6 classic movies, and we're going to give you a list that you vote on. And the movies that get the most votes are the ones we're going to show. So it's going to be super fun, really interesting list. Maybe some movies you have seen, maybe some movies you've seen but never on a big screen. We've got Hitchcock is in there and Scorsese and lots of fantastic filmmakers. Check that out, Film Club. And then, of course, our perennial favorite, Island Women Speak, will be returning January 23rd. Get your tickets to that. You know that? Yes, please. For Island Women Speak, fantastic. It was my favorite event of the whole year last year. Really looking forward to that again. Some of your friends and neighbors will be on the stage telling their personal stories. It's a beautiful event. We're going to have music, we're going to have storytellers, and it's going to be packed. So that's what's coming up at the Opera House. We hope to see you at any and all of these events. And without any more from me, I'm going to send it over to our friend Linda Nelson, who's going to tell you what's going on. Let's hear it for Linda. And I hope no one was blinded by the hat.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I won't give your true identity away, I promise. I'm going to come down here and talk to you guys because this is really a room-wide conversation, right? And for those of you who have been here before, you know that your voices out there, your questions are just as important as our special invited guests on the stage, who we've got really some great people to talk with us tonight. So don't be shy. That's why the lights are like they are. And we're going to have 2 ways tonight for you to talk. We've added mics so that however you're most comfortable. So these mics are going to be down the aisles. Braden's going to bring them down the aisle. And if what you're comfortable with doing is standing up at the mic and talking, you're welcome to do that. If you're not comfortable with that and you want me to just bring you the mic the way sometimes we do in these community conversations, just wave your hand at me and I will bring you the mic. And we will make sure that all voices are heard. So that's the important thing, is that there's a lot of people in the room, probably not as many as if we had done it on the original date, but that's okay. This is a great group, right? And we really are grateful for you being here. So if you've already spoken once and there's other people that haven't spoken, I will probably go to the other people first, right? And then I will come back to you. I just want to make sure that all voices are heard. So don't feel like if you're trying to flag me down for the second or third time and I'm going to somebody else. Don't think I'm dissing you, because I'm not dissing you, okay? We have a lot of thanks because it's the time of being grateful. Like every day is the time for being grateful. We have so much here on this island and in our lives. And first of all, to you guys for being here. The change of dates is hard, and we've had a change even in our special guests. And I'm sure there's people here that couldn't be here last week and people that couldn't be here this week. Thank you for showing up for your community. I think that's an important piece of these community conversations. Also, special thanks to the Island Institute. They are our partners in this series, and we couldn't do it without them. Really glad to have a member of the Island Institute here with us speaking tonight. Also, come on, people, the food. Right? 27 fathoms. So, yeah, big round of applause. And when you make a special effort, they are making a special effort to stay open through the winter here. They're very community-minded business. It is not easy to come down in Stonington on Main Street. Now we've actually closed it to through traffic, but you can still get right to 27 fathoms, okay? Just got to come down School Street, come down this side. Anyway, please thank them in person for doing this. They're donating this, all this great food, and please finish it tonight on your way out, okay? Yeah, another round of applause for them. I mean, it's right. It's like incredible, incredible. And then last, but absolutely very much not least, to the Opera House. Because look at the generosity and the warmth that they do here in terms of hosting this and how they're hosting it. And I just really we couldn't do it. We couldn't make it feel like a living room without this place and without their willingness to do this. So thanks to Erica and Catherine and Braden and Tegan and the whole group. I'd like a round of applause for them, please. So you'll note that I haven't brought the special guests up yet. I'm about to do that. But I always have to say a few words first so you understand why we've asked you all to come to talk about these things tonight. It's, it's the holidays, right? That's why I got the damn hat on. I'm about to take it off. It's hot. It's hot. And, a lot of us are merry and a lot of us are not. So Kathleen Billings, our town manager, who could not be here tonight because of the schedule change, and I actually changed the topic of this Talk of the Towns to this topic after we had 2 armed standoffs in Stonington this fall. We had visible evidence, not that it's not always here, of some of the challenges community members face here, right? So, but they're here with us all the time. The challenges of mental health, the challenges of lack of resources, the challenges of access to education and food and housing, adverse childhood experiences. Not only are these things with us here all the time, I think they're here more than people like to admit. And they are definitely things people don't like to talk about. And in part, we don't like to talk about them because we've been told that they're not community issues, but they're individual issues. And that it's shameful, right? And so we don't come together as communities to talk about these things. We don't acknowledge how much they affect our lives, our schools, what we do every day. And stuff can be hidden all too easily until it's not. And I'll tell you that my own brother struggles with mental illness. And he struggles with lack of resources. And I often don't know how to help him. And so I think that that's part of the issues that we face, is that we often don't know how to help, to reach out, yet at the same time we want to hold everybody who needs something in community, and especially in a small community like this, right? People don't need to be in prison because they have an issue. But with the way we've dispersed families and the way we've changed our culture and our structures, it's very challenging now to hold people in community. So we're lucky. We've got some great special guests with us tonight that actually do this work and have these stories. They both do the work and have their own stories to share. And that's going to help us, me and you, ask the questions and figure out, like, how do we talk to somebody when we see there's an issue? How do we not make this invisible in our communities? How do we create a community that can hold people before it gets to the point of an armed standoff, before the police are involved, who aren't really trained to deal with these things, before people end up in jails when really they have an illness, And the jail is not really helpful, but it's the only place we've got sometimes. So how do we change that? Those are some of my questions. So this is a community-wide conversation. We've got, in addition to our special guests, we've got several people sitting in the audience that actually work in this field as well. Skip Greenlaw is here. He's on the board of Community Compass. Stacy Roberts is here. She's our new community health worker at the Connectivity Hub. I know there's others among you who I don't even know, but for right now, please welcome our special guests who are going to come up on the stage. And as they're coming up, I'm just going to say their names, but they're going to introduce themselves to you. That's Emma Plummer that came up first, Liz Luthner, Kate Tagai, Hector Sapien, and Ashley. Say your last name for me, Ashley. Pesek. Thank you. Thank you so much. You put these calls out, you put these conversations together, and you feel so honored, honestly. I feel so honored when people say yes and say that they'll share their time with us. So please, I hope you all feel as honored as I feel that they're going to share their time and their stories with us. And I'm going to get us started, but then they can ask you questions, they can ask each other questions, you can ask questions, you can make comments, okay? You see the mics have come out here, and I've got one in my hand. So please, this is everybody. So what I'd like to do just is to let people get to know you guys, right? So let's start with Ashley and work our way down this way, and just say, if you can say your name and kind of what your connection to this issue is, and if it's both personal and professional or personal or whatever it is.
Okay. So my name is Ashley Pesic. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I'm born and raised on the island. I live just over the bridge now. I am the program director for the Opiate Free Island Partnership. I'm also the clinical supervisor for the mobile crisis team for Hancock and Washington counties. So we work with people with severe and persistent mental illness, people who are suicidal and homicidal. I am also an adoption matching coordinator. So my lived experience with this is both professional and personal. I raise people with mental illness. I am loved by people with mental illness, and I work with people who have mental illness. So that's why I'm here tonight.
Thank you, Ashley. Hector.
Hi, I'm Hector Sapien. I originally hail from Texas. Been out here 28 years. Boy, got roots in now. Wouldn't go back. Anyway, I am a clinical social worker as well. And I work, I'm in partial retirement, so I'm kind of like scaling down, you know how that goes. I work 2 half days at GSA and a half day at Deer Isle High School. And I work for a Head Start, Down East Community Partners, the Head Start program. In fact, we have 2 classrooms of pre-K kids in the elementary school. So that's kind of what I do. I'm in the mental health business. I've been a child and youth care worker for about 1,000 years. And it's kept me young. Yeah. I mean, what I think about is that you trade maturity for youth. You know what I mean? So in having conversations, you practice a lot of patience. You kind of help people kind of help themselves, so to speak. And in the end, I kind of learn about what it's like to be young again. And I like to connect with young people because they're really invigorating and they bring you into this creative mode, particularly teenagers. But we know all that. Anyway.
Thank you, Hector.
Oh,
Kate.
My name is Kate Sagai. I'm the director for the Center of Sustainable Communities at the Island Institute. And we do a lot of programming there, but our center has a program called the Island Fellows Program, where we're putting young professionals in island communities to help build capacity, to do projects, to really become a part of the community. We also work with education and workforce, and we work with municipalities on various projects. We're working very closely with Linda on the community hub, and down in St. George on their community hub. So really looking to see what our community needs, how can we help, and also how can we work at a systems level with the legislature, with funders, with other partners, to try and really make a difference in the communities along the coast of Maine.
Thanks, Kate. Liz.
I'm Liz Luthner. I am the yoga person in Deer Isle Village, is how I introduce myself to everyone, not just when I'm sitting on a stage. So Deer Isle Yoga is my home and my work, and I think it's my life's work, actually. I came to yoga, actually, about 15 years ago when I was first beginning to get sober. I'm a recovered alcoholic and addict, and yoga actually figured quite prominently as an adjunct to the fairly deep spiritual work I did to recover. So it has always informed me, both professionally and obviously personally. And one of the things that you said, Linda, as you introduced us about living in a community, but sometimes the issue, whatever the issue might be, doesn't have to be addiction. It's easy to think of them as personal issues. And as you were saying that, I was thinking about how when we do recover, it's a personal work that has to be done, but we recover together. I think that my experience, and perhaps one of the reasons that I'm here, is just to say that knowing that there's a community of people out there who are like me, and I'm like them, was important from day one for me, and it continues to be. So, thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
Hi there. My name is Emma Varnum, but a lot of you in the audience know me better as Emma Plummer. And I am a Deer Isle Stonington High School alumni class of 2021. I am currently a certified pharmacy technician, and I have been a pharmacy technician for the past 3 years. And I'm also in school full-time at Eastern Maine Community College in their medical assisting program. I am working on my associate's degree, and I was beyond thankful that I was able to complete my externship right here on the island at the Island Family Medical Center, and I have passed my certification exam, so I am officially a medical assistant. But yeah, I am just here to share my personal views as a young individual in the community.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emma. Thank you. So, didn't I tell you, like, what a great group of special guests? Like, amazing, right? So, I think, Ashley, if you wouldn't mind starting by giving us a little bit of, a little of the data, a little of the environment that we're swimming in that we may not be aware we're swimming in, of what the challenges are.
Sure. Well, I'll give you data I got today, and it's Ellsworth, not Stonington, but it's relevant in that just imagine applying this to the whole rest of the county. Ellsworth PD reported today that they had 556 well-being checks during this last calendar year. So imagine what that looks like across that's one city in our county. So imagine what that looks like across our entire county. Statistically, Maine has one of the higher rates of suicide across the country, specifically for youth, which is defined by the CDC as 12 to 24. So we're talking about young people who are dying at higher rates in our communities than they are nationally. Maine is leading the country in overdose reversals. So I would call that a positive statistic. When we look at the 2023, I think the data said 18% reduction in overdose deaths, which was the first time that we saw a reduction in overdose deaths in 6 years. That number had been steadily climbing due to fentanyl being in literally everything, and it's an extremely powerful synthetic opioid, and people don't often know that they're ingesting it. And it's really dangerous. And so we saw overdose deaths climbing and climbing and climbing and climbing, and Maine said enough. And we have really worked hard to distribute Narcan throughout the entire state to the tune of, for every death in the state of Maine, there are 14 reversals. So that is both a fantastic number in that it's not 14 times higher, but it's also staggering that it could be. And locally, we get pretty regular attention because at OFIP we decided to do something that's not worked in other places. And what we've done is we've distributed Narcan at the Blue Hill Fair. And we've done it for years now with partnership with Northern Light, Blue Hill Hospital, and Healthy Acadia and Health Equity Alliance. And what we've seen is if you can make substance use disorder a talkable subject, if we can have these really hard conversations, if we can go to a place like the fair where they're giving out cotton candy and people are on rides and having a good time, and by the way, stop by and get your Narcan. We're really changing how we have that conversation, and it feels slow but steady. But when you hear numbers like 14 reversals, you can't, for every death, you can't argue that it's having an impact. So that's been one of our primary goals, is how do we continue to make this a talkable subject, and how do we continue to show up in places where you might not think, boy, should people be handing out Narcan here? And the answer is yes. If there are people there, we should be. And so that's, I think those are some of the more important statistics for me.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. And one of the things you said with that number of Ellsworth, right? That's more than one a day. And maybe just actually tell the audience what a wellness check is. Maybe not everybody knows what a wellness check is.
It's sort of like law enforcement terminology for when somebody calls in, and it's more of a social service reason. So that could be anything from my mom lives alone and she hasn't answered the phone in 36 hours, and that's not like her. Can you go knock on the door? To my child is manic and they are currently running down the street without their clothes on.
Yeah, so wellness check. Kate, I'm going to jump to you. So, one of the reasons we really work to make these conversations regional, right? We want to talk to our local community on the island, but our local community is very connected to the peninsula and to the county, and Kate works throughout the county and throughout the state, and I'm just curious a little bit as to what you're seeing out there.
Sure. So we have our Island Fellows work coastwide, and in my day-to-day work, a lot of what I hear comes through them because they're working in communities with individuals, with towns who are working on these big planning projects, who are trying to vision their future. And a lot of what we're hearing reports back from them and what we're seeing as we go out into communities is a lot of housing insecurity is coming up. We run into that with even trying to find housing for our program, but a lot of folks who are unhoused, a lot of communities dealing with housing as a huge challenge, and then the insecurities that go along with that. And then a lot of fear for the future. There's a lot of unknowns in the future, and that fear around our economy, around what's happening in the lobster fishery, around what's happening with our climate. The storms last January had a massive impact where we thought, hey, we're really safe and secure here in Maine. There's people moving to Maine because we have water, because we don't have a lot of forest fires. And this year we saw forest fires. We saw the storm events that flooded a lot of our coast and caused coastwide damage that we still are recovering from. And I think that shook a lot of people to their core to say, there's a lot of uncertainty, and uncertainty brings fear. And so in these future planning, we're having to work around people's fear of the future and of change and what might be coming that we're having to try and plan for. And those are big things that can feel really heavy, that we have to try and break down into the small, manageable goals of how we're going to move forward into this unknown. I think the other part of that is just as young people in communities, a lot of what our fellows struggle with is being the only young person, being the only 20-something. They're coming from a college environment where they are surrounded by people of their own age. They're in community with people who are only their own age, and they're coming into communities where the median age is a lot higher. They might be the only person in their community who is in their age bracket of, between 23 to 26. Or one of a couple or a handful, and it's their struggle to find community and expand their view of what community means, that it's not just with like-minded individuals, but that they do have to make friendships across generations, that they do have to think about what that means to be social in a different way than they had previously, and that can be a real struggle. And we hear a lot. We check in with them weekly to make sure that they're doing well, that their that their job's going well. We provide a lot of mentoring, and a lot of that is, well, there's few young people here, and for our fellows, we provide them with a cohort of other fellows who are doing their work. They have chances to talk to them, but for the folks they're running into in community, they don't necessarily have a big social group that they're able to connect into, and that can be a challenge, especially if you're struggling or you're trying to find someone who, nerds around a particular game in the same way that you do, or who, wants to learn how to surf in the same way that you do in Maine, right? If you have those particular interests, it can be hard to find the connections that are really important to develop that rich social life that can help you through the harder times and the dark of February.
Yeah, thank you for bringing in, for really tying together isolation, uncertainty, and fear. As the Community and Economic Development Director, we're in a very uncertain economic time right now as administrations change. And I know from talking to our fishermen, right, that not knowing what the impact of tariffs may or may not be, not knowing what the incoming policies may or may not affect, not knowing how money will or will not continue to flow, has really raised the anxiety level for people. And as Kate just pointed out, when our anxiety levels are raised, I mean, it makes us fearful and it makes us prone to behaviors that are not always part of our own health or community well-being out of fear. And Hector, I'm just, I'm curious, like, how, what, from both sides, you got the mic. Don't forget to hold the mic like this, guys, so that people can hear you. You know, how you see this reflected in the schools. Because, one thing I wanted to say, so you guys may not know this. You know, Stonington is what's known as a disadvantaged community. What that means is that we have an almost 20% rate of people living at or below the poverty line. People don't think about that. 20%. It's a fifth of our population. And it has this weird impact, right? Disadvantaged communities, we have more opportunities for grants. It advantages us in terms of how we are able to get funding, but if we don't have the resources to put the funding to, or the services, or the situations, or the understanding, then it doesn't really help us. But I think it's important for people to understand what it means, that this is, we have an affluent lobster industry. We're the biggest one in the state, but that doesn't mean that our entire population is affluent, and that's super important. So Hector, tell us how you see all this in the schools.
How's this? Was that good right there? All right, good. Actually, it becomes really pretty often that when I hear stories from students that I meet with, a lot of these are common themes. One of the things that has helped my understanding over the years as I do this work is, first of all, I have to keep them engaged. And teenagers, in all of my work with young people, teenagers are always the hardest ones to keep engaged in a conversation on a regular basis. So I have to mix in humor with a lot of other stories and eliciting from them what is it that they like to do. So it's getting to know people there on a one-to-one level. And what happens is that they relax. And when they relax, they think more broadly. And so the thing that I understand about adolescent development, and I think it's important to understand it because we can very easily judge the difficulties in development during that age, and when we judge them, we throw around words like, for example, oh, that's just a bunch of drama, right? With teenagers, it's just a drama. And what I find is that that's a real kind of lack of understanding that in development, teenagers are really learning their way how to form deeper relationships, and with it is trials and tribulations. It's trial and error, and so I help them figure out what's going on and how to establish those relationships with people that are the same age and be able to form supportive relationships. One of the things that I spend a lot of time doing, I believe, that in line of what you were saying, is that I look to see what supports the students that I'm talking with have. And it varies from many to very few. And what I find from the literature is that those individuals, if they have at least one healthy relationship with an adult, their resilience is boosted. Okay, so when there's less and very few relationships that they can count on, that becomes a problem for them, because then it's stress and it's non-supported stress. So I guess I say that to all of you here because when you're connecting with a young person and you're having a conversation and you're interested in what they're doing, then you are developing a healthy, supportive relationship with them, and that leads to the community that we're talking about. So anyway, I can go on.
Absolutely, yeah, thank you for that. And, you know, one of the things, so I worked in the schools here for about 15 years when I was doing arts in the schools. I had the pleasure of working with Emma in a couple of our musicals. But what I learned is that, you know, a decent percentage of our kids were couch surfing or having to move homes on a regular basis and didn't always, therefore, have enough to eat and didn't always have safe home environments. And we hear from our schools that this is a really pretty big impact here at the school. So can you tell us anything specifically about what you see in regard to that? Are you seeing the impact of that?
The last part,
In regard to a lot of students with housing insecurity, food insecurity, safety insecurity.
Oh yeah. I mean, those are like basic needs, right? So the thing that I understand about it as well is that when you're not getting your basic needs as well as other needs, your stress levels go up because you're not sure where it's going to come from. Brains don't learn very well when they're highly stressed on a chronic, continuous basis. So a lot of the work is how to find a place and have them have their at least basic needs managed and taken care of, and then how to be able to go forward and develop more avenues to get more needs met. So the thing to remember is that the higher the stress, you mentioned the stress levels from not having those basic needs, we become less rational when we're highly stressed. There's a lot of students that are in school and they're nervous about what's going to happen, how people are going to think about them and how they're going to fit in. Do they fit in? Do they have a friend? Well, this friend said this and that. And so talking about it really helps. And so the more people they have to talk about it, that helps them work it out. It's helping them think it through, so to speak. And so what I say to a lot of teachers and other people that are working with them, it doesn't have to be a clinical social worker necessarily. Those are for the more difficult young people situations. But in general, anybody can be that person for them. It's important that teachers get to know the students and know them on a personal level, as well as coaches and other people that are in the community. So then that's the community, the glue of the community you're talking about.
Yeah, so I guess my question always is, and I think probably some people in the audience too, is like, how do we step into those, where those gaps are? Because there seem to be quite a few gaps, and kids that we would wish wouldn't be falling through those safety nets, So I know Liz and Emma, you guys may have experiences that you want to share here, or people in the audience might have questions, but do you have anything you guys want to share?
So, I personally experienced a lot of this growing up, and probably so did a lot more of the kids that I was growing up with, but maybe they didn't share it. We never really know everyone's struggles. But, personally, my mom is a single teen mom, okay? And she was doing the absolute best as she can. I love my mom. I love what she did for us. But I don't think a lot of people understand that for a lot of us kids, having that breakfast at school, having that lunch at school, and having after-school activities is a huge relief on us, but it's also a humongous relief on the parents. Because, the school schedule usually doesn't work within the same hours as our parents have to go to work in order to provide more and more for us children. So I was heavily relying on, I was always in an after-school activity, I was always a part of the community, and, that helped me grow and develop into the amazing person that I am today. And, but that is huge, and it's a huge thing from the community that was able to bring that to us. And, we have such a unique community. I have attempted to go to other school systems. I tried to go to GSA, was not it. I couldn't do it. I tried to go to Ellsworth, too large. I really needed that one-on-one student-teacher thing that we have here, because that is the only way that I was able to learn. And, in these larger schools, you just don't have that opportunity. And so, that's a huge part of what got me to where I am today, truly.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Liz, do you want to add anything?
I was struck by something you said, Hector, and what you just referred to too, which is that this whole life of ours is built on relationships, and that the more we do know each other and we can be open and honest with each other, even about these difficult subjects, and thank you for bringing this one up and so many other difficult subjects. And, once we get to know people, even casually, and inject humor into, and just be ourselves, and that even something that sounds weird like yoga, once you get to know the people who are coming in and practicing or whatever, it starts to, open up a world of questions that can be answered and that doesn't have to be in an arrangement like this, in casual conversation with people. You know, I one of the great blessings of my life is to be in the center of this community there in the village, and have the other village, and have some of the after school kids come to the yoga studio, which is first of all hilarious and really fun. And so I have had the, you know, like, I had the experience of seeing some of the smallest kids, and also I've also had the opportunity lately of working with the adult ed for one of the programs where they're trying to help out the caregivers for the same children on the other end of things. So the sort of grandparents caring for the smaller kids are coming into my little studio there. I feel really grateful about that. And you know, I guess that's the main thing that I want to say is that about this particular subject that we're talking about right this minute is that the more that we can realize that we're all just human beings doing our best. And in my own experience, both in the addiction thing and then with a medical ailment that I recently have had some experience with, is that I think we're all here to help each other. We're just waiting to do it. That has been my own experience. And if we can, you know, just have a kind of realization that that's, you know, in our each in our own different ways, in all of your different ways, we all have our own experiences, and that's really all I have is my own personal experience that we can bring to whatever the topic at hand is, and that's what makes a community, and that's what we have here on this island. So,
Thank you, Liz.
I just want to add to this because I live with a whopping amount of teenagers. My husband and I have been licensed foster parents in the state of Maine for a decade. We have 17 permanent children. But just in terms of scope of the problem, last weekend we had 13 kids at our house. Not all of them are my permanent kids because there's constant emergencies in the state. And so that's the extreme end, right? We're talking about instability and lack of safety. The extreme end is that you end up in a child welfare system. But just in terms of just scope, it's significant. We have over 2,500 kids in the state of Maine who are in custody at this point, and we had a 33% increase of kids in custody this past year. So scope of the problem is pretty large, but also I think the question you asked is what can we do? And so here's the cool thing. When I had 13 kids, some of which are not my permanent kids, we took them everywhere with us. We looked like a clown car. We went to the local dance recital. We filled the stage trying to take a family picture, and literally not one person batted an eyelash that we had some new people. We went through the line. They were like, "Oh, you must be Ashley. It's nice to meet you." Because that's what community does, right? Like, they embrace these kids who are not actually from our community, who are visiting our community, but it's clear because they're with me that there's a reason they're with me, right? And so you know, they were embraced by this community, and our community has done that in so many ways, time and time and time again. And I think, you know, in terms of that, how do people show up? Yoga, that's one thing. We had a teacher who brought one of our kids consistently to yoga because it helped with anxiety. That was a thing that happened. So it wasn't just the yoga, but it was also the connection with the teacher who took the time to drive this kid there because God knows I didn't have time to do that. Helping with housing, jobs, vehicles, all of these things that people need to build roots within a community, we have watched our community do over and over and over again for our teenagers. And so we exclusively foster teenagers, so we are bringing people into our community and our home who are launching into adulthood. And they don't just need parents, they need employers and friends and coaches and all the things that you have when you have a robust life, because they're not just trying to launch into adulthood, they're also simultaneously trying to heal from trauma. And so, you know, that's sort of like my personal example I can give to you, but in a real way, that's the extreme end when kids are actually in child welfare custody. We also have lots of kids who are living in similar circumstances who are not in custody. And you can still do those things for them. Hector just shared, you know, that one trusting adult builds resilience. The same is true for a kid who lives at home with their single mom who just simply can't get them to that, and the teacher decides to give them a ride. Conversations, very rich conversations happen in car rides. So be a car ride for someone. And these are things that we watch our community do that I think does make us unique. I've said the same thing. I've literally lived from here to Hawaii, and I have not ever lived anywhere as special as this community. And in part, it's because I was raised by my parents. I was raised by my aunt and uncle, but I was also raised by this island. And what they contributed to my life allowed me to overcome my own traumatic experiences. Some were very public and some were very personal. And so that having trusting adults who were super invested in our life, I think I really completely and totally credit our community and just the love that they pour into people. And so you asked about kids, and I think that's what you can do to sort of just turn the table a little.
Thanks, Ashley. I feel like we should probably give you a standing ovation for fostering that many young people. I mean, seriously. Yeah, go ahead, Hector.
I want to kind of talk a little bit about what you bring to the table. Oh, yes, I know. Okay. How's that? I work with Head Start also, so when I get a little too stressed throughout the week from working with adolescents, I go work with little kids. And then when I get tired of little kids, then I go work with big kids. Anyway, so that's good. I work my life well. But so anyway, in the Head Start program, I've worked there for about over 10 years as a mental health consultant. And one of the things that I felt was going to give good bang for our buck was to integrate yoga into the classroom curriculum on a regular basis. And teachers have been doing that over the years. And now it's like one of the main activities, like recess or like stand play. And yoga is a big kind of leverage strategy, because the way you describe it, it involves breathing, obviously, and not only that, but when you deep breathe and you do rhythmic movement like that, it chills the brain. And when you relax your brain, there's more brain working. When you are stressed and you are aroused emotionally and you are in a crisis, you lose 76% of your brain because you're in a crisis mode, right? When you chill out, when you relax, you do deep breathing, that 76% of your brain comes back. So if there's anything that I do when I sit with a student in my office, we're talking with the whole brain there and how to strategize, how to do work in tough situations in school, in the classroom, with grades, with teachers, with parents, and then they're figuring it out.
In community meetings, at town meetings.
That's
This is like just really good advice, I think, in general about the breathing thing. I just want to put an exclamation point on that, Hector. And I want to thank you guys for bringing this to this next piece, which is the connection piece, right? So what we just heard from all of these guys is that what matters is the connection. But I also know that the connection can be hard to make. Like, you wouldn't know it hearing these guys, because these are the folks that are making the connection, right? But for some of us in the audience, it might feel really difficult. Like, how do you connect, right? Well, clearly, with the number of kids at Ashley's house, we could use more foster parents, okay? And I'm not joking. I mean, our selectman, Evelyn Duncan, I just want to say, is a foster parent and has fostered kids for years and years and years. And there are kids who need a place to live, temporarily or permanently, all the time. And there are kids that need rides all the time. I used to drive all the kids we worked with in the after-school program. We used to feed the kids in the after-school, not the formal after-school program, just in the stuff we were doing as community members. Because, if you didn't have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the car or some kind of food, we had hungry kids. And hungry kids are stressed kids. Hungry kids, stressed kids, as you just heard, can't use their brain. So I think the question for, maybe I see a lot of thought bubbles out there, is like, how do you connect, right? How do you connect? Skip, do you want to say something about Community Compass? Because I know that that's one of the ways to connect, isn't it? I mean, do you want to say something about that? Yes.
So, good evening. My name is Skip Greenlaw. I'm on the Board of Directors of Community Compass. How many know anything about Community Compass? Just raise your hand. Not very many. Okay, well, I'll try and give you a brief. I could talk for a long time, but I'll try and make it very
so
brief.
you got to be brief because it's
Yeah, I
almost
will.
8 o'clock.
I will.
Okay, thank you.
So, Community Compass was started 12 years ago after a woman by the name of Donna Beagle of Portland, Oregon, came and talked to us about generational poverty. Now, you've heard a lot from these people tonight about generational poverty, and Hector or Ashley or Emma can probably define it a lot better than I can. But generational poverty is people that grow up in poverty, have children, and the children don't get all of what many of us got as children. And so 8 of us, myself included, formed Community Compass with a mission of connecting neighbors to opportunity. So what does that mean? So we have 4 navigators. We work in 10 towns in southwestern Hancock County. And it might mean helping someone file for Social Security, helping someone file for Medicare, helping, I think, in one case, they even bought a house. Ashley, is that correct? We bought a house? I'd love to tell a story about one of Ashley's foster children. It makes me almost want to cry. It's just beautiful. And Ashley is just an incredible person. And she grew up just a few feet down from where I live on Oceanville Road. She and her sister Angel. Anyways, we might help people get into a school. We might help people get child care. And there are so many things. We currently have 171 clients. And the nice thing that our navigators do is they stay with the clients until the clients has achieved the goal. For example, one of the things that we did at Thanksgiving and today is we delivered between 85 and 90 meals to people in our service area. And this was a ham and all the fixings, 2 shopping bags of food that we delivered today. Okay, one other thing I have, and if you'd like to be on a mailing list, please see me after the meeting. I'll be glad to add your name. I have some information about Community Compass that describes what the navigators do, and there's a fundraising letter in there. I'm not asking you to contribute, but if you want to, that would be fine. And so that's all I have. I just want to, if I can just ask one more question. And I really want to ask this of Ashley, Hector, and nice to see you again, Hector. It's been a long time. And Emma. And that is, I've been well aware for many years that there is a real problem in our schools with some parents. And some parents call up and abuse teachers very, very seriously and unnecessarily. And I'm just wondering if you all have any ideas of what we could do to work with these parents to make them less provocative to the teachers, because it destroys the morale of the teachers terribly. And I'll say to the Linda's question, there are mentor programs at both the high school and the elementary school, and I've done some at the elementary school, and I'm going to do some at the high school. So if you want to be a mentor to one of the students, just go up and see the principal and talk with them. I'm sure the principal would be glad to help you out, and that would be something that would be well worthwhile. Thanks a lot for listening.
Thank you, Skip. So you guys want to respond
Skip,
to the...
I think Hector just told us how to help those parents who call, scream, and get them to breathe. They're stressed. They are not using 76% of their brain. I think we just need to, honestly, listening, right? Because if somebody is calling and they're screaming mad at you or they're screaming mad at life, it's probably because they're under a great deal of stress. And most often, if you look not very deep, you're going to find that those basic needs just are not getting met.
Emma, do you want to add anything?
I don't know if I have much to add to that. I would need more details, I guess, to really understand, like what are they calling and harassing about, I guess, to figure out how to help that situation.
I also think in general we have an attention problem as a culture, and it's very difficult for any of us to pay attention to anything for very long because we have a lot of distractions and we have the stressors. So I don't know what comes first in that chicken and egg of stress and attention. But again, this is about the connection thing and the community thing and the nearness of us to each other. Is that we have this in us. We have this great gift to give, which is the gift of attention, and to actually look at someone when you're speaking to them and actually dare to look them in the eyes even. That can be the help that and the experience that some of the kids and adults don't have. And, you know, maybe we're here to help one person. We don't know who that person is or how we might help them. And as you were talking about just the giving of a ride, that could have an indelible impact on someone's life, and they're going to think about that forever. They'll probably, many children are thinking of you driving them around with peanut butter and jelly sandwiches 25 years from now, and that will cause them to do their version of that for someone else. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to address the part about the parent.
Hector.
Oh, yes.
They can't hear you.
And I think you touched on it a little bit about how I remember back in my first days in working in a residential treatment center in El Paso, God, a million years ago, longer. And I was fortunate to be asked in to talk with the parent of one of the children that were in that treatment center. And what the social worker told me is that the reason that child was there is because the state had taken them away because of abuse and so forth and so on. And so in my head at that time, I was young, I didn't know a whole lot about the work, but what the social worker told me is that it's not very uncommon for the parents to then, when you find out their story, there's a story of other issues that they went through. So abuse goes from family generation to family generation until there's a intervention of some kind. And so we're lucky that we now have mental health people in the schools, because now it's available for students that may need that. Now, not all students need that, and yet to have it available, then that, and to also destigmatize it, to make it a usual, something that everybody goes through. Everybody at some point or another. So in order to be talking with that parent, it's important for the staff to be aware, the teachers as well, if we're talking about teachers, to be aware that that's a possibility, but there's also training that could happen on how to help that staff person be able to weather that interaction. And that means sitting there and listening. It's kind of like training somebody for the complaint department at a big business store, right? What do? They listen. They listen, and even though they're going off, they don't take it personal, right? And so you need training for that, and you need people to kind of help them learn what that's about. And when you get that, then you're able to do that kind of work with the parents. I work at Down East Community Partners, and there it's also common for parents to call the office and do that. And that happened a month ago. That same situation happened, and we ended up debriefing it with the staff, and we came up with some tips that would be helpful for them the next time that happened. So it's a way to get the experience. You get the experience of working with the people that you have, and now you provide a really good service because now you're solving problems. Because yeah, there are issues underneath that. Why are they complaining? Why are they going off? Well, underneath that, there's a situation that's a problem, and we still got to get to it.
And I think that's such a good point, Hector, because I think that what we sometimes see is a lot of this, right? It's their fault. It's their fault. There's a lot of blame casting as opposed to problem solving. And it's not easy to take somebody's kind of abusive behavior, right, which is what it can sometimes be. And I think that Skip's point is, you know, that's not what town officials sign up for. It's not what school teachers sign up for. But it is sometimes what we get, right? Because there are people that are stressed, and they're part of our community. And maybe there's more people that are stressed that are part of our community than we'd like, but it is true that they are. Kate?
I was just going to put in a plug for NAMI, Maine. They do a mental health first aid class, and we have our fellows do it, but it's like a CPR or a first aid class, but for mental health. It's for those of us that don't have the training, don't have the background, don't have the licensure, but we're working, with people in community, or we're dealing with the stressed people, and it's just, it raises awareness, it gives you some language, it gives you just an awareness of what to look for and some of the resources out there. So, for those teachers, for our fellows, for anyone that, would find that useful, who interacts with human beings, that mental health first aid is can be a really helpful class. I found it very helpful. So just putting a plug in for NAMI Maine's class.
That's a good plug. And we just had a session here, right? You had to cancel it? Oh, so there was one of those NAMI first aid classes scheduled here. It was had to be canceled and rescheduled. So look for it in the future, right? Even if so one of the connection things. Okay, so we're so much talking about how do you connect, right? How to connect, and we think now we're super connected because of these ridiculous things, right? But part of our problem is they also disconnect us. And so it's the dark time of year right now, right? So everybody's in their houses because we don't go out as much. We don't like to drive in the dark because the deer own the roads in the dark. They do. So I'm there with you. So you're at your home, you're alone. Like, how are you connecting? Or you're a kid at school and maybe your only connection is to your phone. So like in this environment, right? How do we reach out and connect? And I know that's why you guys came today, because you want to know about community well-being. And what we are hearing is that it's all about that connection and how people connect. And so some of these situations can feel scary and dangerous to people. And I think that the police sometimes get some of the same training that you're talking about and sometimes don't. Teachers, obviously, sometimes get some of that training, sometimes don't. So it's hard to know, right? How to connect and how to feel safe and how to help somebody who feels maybe unsafe to you. Do you guys want to it's almost 8 o'clock. I won't keep you up there much longer, but I think it would be great to just hear from you a little bit about that, if you have anything to share.
We're all really different, and I think sometimes when we encounter someone who we think is on substances or who appears mentally ill or who is hallucinating, we get really alarmed because it's not something we encounter in our day-to-day, and we're not sure what to do. That's really what the alarm is it's actually about us. We don't know what to do, and that feels uncomfortable. But so here's some things. First of all, they are far less likely to be violent than they are to be the victim of a violent crime. So there isn't statistically anything to fear. Your discomfort because you're not sure what to do can really be overcome by just being a good friend and neighbor. Treat them as you would anybody else. And I think also I would challenge anybody in this room, if you could, with a straight face, say that you don't know a single person with substance use disorder or mental illness. I think you would likely be being dishonest. I think the reality is that we could all probably walk around with shirts on that say, I love someone with bipolar disorder. I love someone with substance use disorder, because that's probably the truth, which means you're probably more skilled than you think you are to interact with that person. And so, I think people do get nervous, and I think I would caution us against that. Sometimes they just have a really great story to tell. And again, just listen.
Thanks, Ashley. Liz?
Heard of the ACE study? Anybody here heard of the ACE study? ACE? Adverse Childhood Experiences. It's a research study that, in fact, Oprah Winfrey did a piece on that. About that means that 1 out of 3 people in the general community, the sampling, have at least 1 or 2 adverse childhood experiences in their history, okay? So what it brings to mind is that it's more prevalent than we know, but we tend to hide it, okay, and stigmatize it. And so it's really easy. I think the thing you mentioned with having that conversation with someone and they're upset and they're kind of being emotional and we get nervous because we're not sure how to handle it. First thing to know, I think you're right about being clear about what's the fear factor here, what's the facts here, okay? And it's more likely that they're not going to do something because first of all, they're talking about it rather than doing something. And they're not going to hurt you if you're just sitting and watching and listening to that. But that means you're going to be emotional, and you're now dealing with your own emotions on how to manage this, okay? And there are ways to do that, and it's smart ways, and to be safe about it. But it's that part that is a difficult challenge, is to how do we go through those difficult circumstances with someone who has substances or is in a crisis or, in that situation. We don't know what to do, but all we could do is listen. All we can do is listen. We're going to get information that helps us figure it out, but we can at least listen. It doesn't take much. And now you're just like you're fascinated with a waterfall or an experience in real life. Now you're seeing someone go through an emotional experience, and you watch it and listen and see what's going on. Anyway, I'll put
Thanks,
that out there
Hector.
to you.
Liz,
Good
I
luck.
saw you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just want to add to what the two of you have just said, and as as someone who was in crisis and was drunk and falling into the streets on a regular basis, not in this town, but where I used to live in southern New England, and people reached out to help me, and the people who did that were people who are like me, who had been in that position themselves and then recovered. And I just want to say something specific about if you know someone who is in that category of appearing to need a certain kind of help because they are in the throes of addiction or a substance use disorder. We're using slightly different words here, but I think we can all get the general idea. We're speaking about similar conditions here. And people like me and like many other people on this very island who have recovered, that's like our job as a person who's recovered from the disease of addiction, is to help the next guy, the next woman, the next person get better. And so you can call me even and I will help, or I will get one of my fellows in recovery to help. That's what we know how to do because we've been there ourselves. And I'm telling you right now, Liz at Dear Al Yoga, call me on my cell phone, bang on the door, or call Alcoholics Anonymous hotline. Regular, normal people can do that too. So, and there are many other, we know all the other agencies and services and out there, but that's why those places exist. And picking up that phone and saying, I think somebody needs help and I don't know how to help them, or I don't want to help them, totally legitimate thing to say, or I'm scared. We're not scared because we've done it ourselves. So that's a specific thing that maybe you can do if you see somebody in that kind of a crisis. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that, Liz. You guys have been remarkably quiet tonight. I want to make sure that I'm making sure I see everybody and that you all have a voice here. I mean, you don't have to have a question. You could have an experience, you could have a story, you could have a comment. Just because they're up there, this can be an impediment, but this is all about all of us in the room tonight. Anybody have anything they want to say? Marcia?
It's so impressive to hear about all of your work, and I think we know that the burdens are really on people like you and teachers. And there was some discussion tonight about helping kids, how we can reach out and make the connection. And Skip mentioned the Community Compass program, and mentoring was mentioned, but I'm just curious about any other structured programs that anyone could talk about where we might volunteer and be that person who gives a ride or provides a mentor or some kind of one-on-one contact for the kids on this island who I think really need as much support as we can give them.
Yeah, the mentoring program and the after-school program are both great. So you can, as Skip said, you can just go to the school and talk to the principal about those. But what do you guys say? Ashley, Hector?
I would have said the after-school program. I think
After-school
that's
program.
probably going to be your biggest bang for your buck because they know where all the kids are.
Emma?
So I just wanted to talk a little bit more about adults. I mean, we've been talking a lot about kids, and I think that is a great focus. But also, give people some slack. You know, I think a lot of the adults were also, again, in a very unique situation as we are aging because of the economy and the inflation and, you know, our goals that, you know, older generations set their goals and like they got their house, they got their great job at like 20 years old, and like that is fantastic. You know, we want to also be able to follow in your guys' footsteps to be able to have those generational goals, and it's just simply not in the cards for a lot of us. And so for any of you thinking, you know, any of you Gen Z, millennials, or even Gen X who have not been able to hit those goals, like just know that like that's not your fault. It is not your fault. All right, you'll hopefully get there one day. I am currently, you know, I'm 21 and I am currently in the process of buying a house, hopefully. But the downside is that I have to leave my community, not only my community of Deer Isle, but my community of Maine as a total, because it is too expensive. Why am I in like 80,000 annual income, 2 adults, no kids, and all of my vitamins are completely depleted just because I simply can't afford groceries here. I don't have kids. I have a very cheap rent, and Maine is just not affordable anymore. And I feel like a lot of other people are also in that same kind of situation. And just know that it is not your fault, and don't put yourself down because of it.
Thank you, Emma. Yeah. I totally appreciate that, and it really builds on kind of what I said at the beginning too, right, about we can't individualize these problems. These problems are structural, all of them, and that's the other way that we can plug in and connect, right? Like we can figure out how to do housing. I've got a couple people in the room tonight that are on the housing task force that are really working on some solutions for housing at all levels, right? And we can figure out, like, if people need groceries, right? How to get to the food pantry, how for us to donate stuff. I mean, these are the ways you connect. I mean, we can create our own solutions, but we have to be willing to recognize that perhaps we have more and other people need some of that, and some of what we have is just that ability to reach out or give somebody a car ride or spend some time, you know? So I don't make resource sheets for these events. The premise of these talks of the towns is, in fact, this really interesting thing called hope. And hope in this room right now, between all of us, is a verb. It's not a thing. It's not an emotion. It's what we do. It's the connection. And that's what gives us hope, is when we can do something. And in some religions say that this dark time of the year, especially when it's so dark, that's why we have these Christmas lights and these holidays and stuff, is because that's the only time people can know hope is when it's really dark, right? Like, and for those of you who know people in 12-step programs or who have been addicts and who have recovered, it's when they hit bottom, right? Or any of those things. It's in the dark. We're in the dark right now. We're in the darkest time of the year. Now is the time we can connect the best, when we should care about our community the most, when the community has the most needs, when we can really connect and make some difference for some people. So I always give the special guests last words here. And I just like to go down the line and say, based on this conversation tonight, what are your last words?
I'm just extremely grateful for this community. I mean, I said it before, but this community raised me. But ultimately, it helps me raise my kids too. I watch you take care of a lot of people who are in hurting places in my work for OFIP every day. And so I'm just really grateful for that.
Be the immune system of humanity.
Okay, Hector, wow. Woo! All right, somebody write that down for me, okay? That's...
We work with a lot of communities up and down the coast, and I'm always just overwhelmed and grateful for the resources that Deer Isle, Stonington, and Stonington have created for themselves, from the Opera House to the Opioid-Free Island Partnership, Healthy Island Project, Project Launch. All of these community focused organizations we've worked with, and there's communities out there that are resource poor in facing the same challenges that you guys are without the resources that come with it. And I'm always just so grateful to come and be a part of this community and get to meet more people in it, but also just in awe of the resources you've created for yourself.
Thanks, Kate.
I'll just say I'm very grateful for the generous heart of this island, of this community. It reminds me every day that anything's possible.
I just love being a part of this. I love learning about all the resources that the island has, and then it makes me an outlet where I can also share those resources to people. There have been times where at the pharmacy, like, people are looking for Narcan, and instead of letting myself sell Narcan for $50 to a ginormous corporation, no, I send them over to Ashley. I'm like, here is a resource. Here you can get free Narcan. You can get the training, you know. Here's the info. Go have fun, you know. But that's what I love, this community so much, and like, this is truly like the center of who I am.
Thank you all so much. Please thank our guests. So this is your resource sheet. These are conversations. These guys are going to come down off the stage. I'm pretty sure there's more food out there still. So you're welcome to hang out in the lobby and to talk to people a little bit and to get resources by connecting. Thank you for coming to Connect tonight. Really appreciate you being here. We hope to see you again toward the end of January for the next one of these. Have a good night. Be safe.